This video is brought to you by the brand new Apex Pro Mini keyboards, which come in both wired and wireless variants. Click the link below and use offer code SKILLUP to get a 12% discount, or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. What's up, nerds? Saints Row. I played 4 hours of it. It's looking fine. I was invited by the publisher to a 4 hours hands-on preview event where I got to play the opening chapters of the game on a laptop PC. There were almost no restrictions on what I could capture or discuss, with the exception of just some story-related stuff they want to keep under wraps. Full props to Deep Silver Volition for being really open with this preview process, because often you go to these things and they're really stage managed and there's heaps of stuff you can't show or talk about and you can't capture your own footage. Deep Silver Volition put on a straight-up, honest-to-goodness preview event that is going to help people properly calibrate their levels of hype for this one, and I always appreciate whenever a publisher or developer does that. I definitely had my hype levels recalibrated for this as I was playing. I'll be honest and say that I went in excited because the preview footage I'd seen all looked pretty cool, and also the promise of a reboot of this franchise really intrigued me. It's been a long time since the last GTA game, and Saints Row has always kind of existed under the shadow of GTA, like a parody of it, but also its own self-aware, completely over-the-top ridiculous thing that only got more ridiculous as time went on. Seeing things re-baseline to a more terrestrial affair here in this reboot was something that I was interested in, but also the prospect of a new entry in this urban open-world subgenre. That really interested me. We don't get many of these games, like GTA, Watch Dogs, Mafia, Sleeping Dogs, Saints Row. I think that's about it. That's a bunch of games, but they're all spread out over the past 2 decades, and they're increasingly spread out these days as few publishers dare try to compete with the absolute juggernaut that GTA 5 has become. So all of this is by way of saying, I was keen for this because I was interested to see how this Saints Row reboot might not only advance the Saints Row franchise, but also bring some new ideas to this urban open world subgenre. After 4 hours with it, my initial impression is that it isn't much of an advancement in either regard, and that term reboot probably sets the wrong expectations. Like, when video game franchises get rebooted, they typically feel substantially different. Resident Evil 7 rebooted the franchise after Resident Evil 6. Assassin's Creed Origins rebooted the franchise after Syndicate. God of War 2018 is very different to the previous trilogy, etc. These reboots all said, okay, everything before this was last gen, what's the new gameplay template we're setting down for this current generation? Saints Row is not that kind of reboot. It is in the sense that it's got a new cast of characters and it's bringing things back down to earth, but it still feels like those old open world games from back in the day, and in my view, not in a good way. But let's be clear though, this is fun. Saints Row games are about doing crimes, blowing shit up, and having a laugh. You will be able to do all of those things here in this video game. Absolutely, for sure. Especially if you're playing co-op with a mate, which will certainly be the best way to play through this. But as I said, my time with it really tempered my expectations. So far, it does feel like stepping back in time to that 2010 model of urban open world game design and gameplay, something that I think some people will find novel and refreshing. To me, it felt a little tired. I really struggled with the writing and the cast of characters, and I was also frustrated by a number of technical and quality of life issues that I suspect won't be fixed or changed in time for launch. Later parts of the game may change my opinion on all of this stuff, as this is a very sandbox-driven game, and I only had access to a small portion of that sandbox. I really hope that's the case, because right now, Saints Row is looking like it's going to make a bunch of people happy, but I'm personally not really feeling this one. We'll talk technical stuff first, since there are a few red flags to call out here. I was playing on a laptop, I wasn't able to confirm the specs of that, but playing at 1080p, max settings were smooth, performance was good, though the laptop did struggle with 1440p. I didn't have any crashes, no stuttering or slowdown. These are all encouraging signs. I also note the recent Digital Foundry video on the topic of the PC port, and they were very impressed, and that gang is nothing if not extremely reliable. Good PC ports are sadly a rarity, so hats off to Volition for putting in the work here, and hopefully the final release of the game holds up as well as this preview build did. Consistent with the overall theme of this review, I think Saints Row looks fine. This is a reboot, and given that we're well into the next console generation at this point, I was hoping for a larger visual leap than the one Volition have served up here. This is a title that is also shipping on PS4 and Xbox One, so it is going to be constrained by that last gen hardware, but even then, comparable experiences have far surpassed what Saints Row is is delivering here. Watch Dogs Legion's fully ray-traced rendition of London was regularly very visually arresting, and I was never arrested here in Saints Row, literally or figuratively. It's not just the geometry, lighting, and draw distances though. Overall art direction is a little flat. Everything I saw kind of looked the same, and it's possible that I was just hanging around the one part of this map at the start of the game and that everything starts to look really different and distinct later on. But so far, Santo Alesso is absent the landmarks, boroughs, and landscapes that really sear themselves into your mind. As I wrote this paragraph, I scrubbed through the whole 4 hours worth of footage that I had just to see if I'd forgotten some really standout location, but I hadn't. Again, this may change as I get further into the game, and I hope it does. In terms of gameplay, bugs, glitches, quality of life, etc., I found things to be a little rough. Facial animations were a little undercooked, lip syncing was sometimes not synced, which really took me out of cutscenes. Animation pairing during takedowns was really bad, and more than a few of the takedowns I performed had some janky pairing issues that looked pretty silly. We played on controller, and at this point you're probably like, dude, you're giving that Doom Polygon guy a run for his money. You're not wrong, but two things in my defense. Number one, I don't play on controller much these days. I can do it, I'm just not the best at it. However, and this brings me to point two, the controller aim is terrible. I played around with stuff like dead zones to try and improve that. It really didn't make much of a difference. It just feels so sensitive and without nearly enough snap to support given the number of targets you're rapidly switching between. Just so you don't think I'm alone in this, Austin came with me to this preview event and he was sitting right next to me and I leaned over and I was like, so what do you think of the controller aim? And he was immediately like, oh my god, it's so bad. And it was really unpleasant to shoot stuff with a controller to the point where some missions actually include shortcuts to shoot explosive items. Sometimes you get a prompt to press the Y button, at which point your character will automatically target and shoot explosive barrels or whatever. If you had good, responsive aim controls, why would you need this? Two other gripes related to camera. So firstly, when you're on foot and shooting a gun, there's no option to switch the side that you're aiming from. You're always shooting over your right shoulder. That means if you want to shoot from behind cover, you can only do so from the right-hand side of that cover. If you want to shoot from the left side, you need to move completely out of cover because you can't switch hands. That's pretty lame. That's a pretty basic third-person shooter mechanic that's been around since third-person shooters were a thing. Surely wouldn't have been too hard to have implemented that. Second issue is controls and camera while driving. So there are no camera toggles while driving. There isn't like a higher up view, a lower set view, first-person view, nothing. There's just the one perspective, and that camera perspective isn't locked to the back of the car. As you are driving, you need to constantly control the camera because if you just turn the car, the camera remains in a fixed position. This is really annoying. As I was experiencing it, I was like, am I going crazy? Is this how most of these games handle driving cameras and I just forgot? So when I got home, I downloaded and installed GTA 5 and Watch Dogs Legion, and sure enough, they have normal cameras that just follow you so you can just drive rather than having to constantly massage the camera angle. I also emailed Deep Silver to confirm that there wasn't any missing settings or options, and they confirmed for me that no additional camera options are available. This is it. So this is a 2020 urban open world game. It's a reboot of a 2 decades old franchise. It's a game where a huge chunk of it is spent either shooting stuff or in a car or shooting stuff while in a car, and it's absent some pretty basic features that I don't think are unfair expectations at this point. Facial and combat animations, lip sync, controller issues, and missing camera options are all things that on their own can be looked past, but pile them up and they start to cause a problem, and I definitely felt that during my playtime.
Are we gonna make rent?
We'll make rent. We just gotta be a little more creative.
Last time we got creative, I got stabbed 3 times.
Hey, it would have been 4 times if Nina and I hadn't shown up.
It would have been 0 times if you were on time.
One area where we can't contest Saints Row's reboot bona fides is the narrative department. This is an entirely new storyline with a new cast of characters set in a new location. I'm well aware of the discourse surrounding these characters. It hasn't been a positive reception, to say the least. I really went into this with an open mind because I was never particularly attached to the old Saints Row crew, so I was up for anything. Unfortunately, I struggle with these characters, but again, it's early days, and it's very possible that by the end of the game, I love them, so I don't want to jump to conclusions. The premise for this is that you, the boss, are a former employee of a private military organization. You get the arse, which is Australian slang for getting fired, and so to repay your student loans or something, you decide to start your own criminal gang with your 3 buddies 2 of whom are already part of local criminal gangs. You, of course, can create your own boss in Saints Row's famously flexible character creator. I didn't spend too much time here because I was keen to get into the actual game, and also because there's a demo for this character creator already available on the Epic Games Store, so you can check that out for yourself if you're keen. Perhaps the most important decision you can make when creating your character is your voice, which is also linked to your personality and voice lines. Your character will always do the same thing and make the same decisions, but the things they say during conversations will change to fit the accent and personality you choose. I spoke to one person who described their character as a mouthy Mary Poppins. Another described theirs as a Texan with a deep drawl and some colourful turns of phrase. My dude was a cocky, shoot-from-the-hip asshole. To be honest, I couldn't stand him. I really wish I went with the Mary Poppins option, because if I had to listen to 20 hours of this dude constantly bigging himself up, I think I would struggle.
Dude, what the fuck?
Played a little fast and loose on the job, and, well, my CO wasn't a fan.
You gotta be kidding me.
Swear to God, this lady walked right off the set of an 80s action movie. I was half expecting her to call me Rook and threaten to take my badge.
Your posse of buddies exhibit the same relentless bravado, and it makes for a team that already feels really one note. They're all really brash and really confident all of the time. It feels like some different personalities might have been useful here. Guardians of the Galaxy has your brash hero dude with deeply held insecurities, your murderous huntress who's emotionally guarded, the slow-thinking, ever-literal comic relief, the angry rat who's nursing his trauma, and the tree. These are all very different characters that play off each other. You spend 30 seconds with them, and you can immediately sense these traits and how they might click together to result in good storytelling. I spent 4 hours with these characters here in Saints Row, and all I got from each of them was the worst parts of Star-Lord's personality on repeat.
Okay, this is gonna suck, buddy.
Oh, fuck! You're doing great.
You're being very brave. Fuck you!
Hey, keep talking to Kev like that, and you won't get a star on the star chart.
Ow!
What else surprised me about this posse is the way we're introduced to them. This is an entirely new cast of characters, and I'd imagine that we would see them meeting each other, how they came together. But no, they're already best buds when you start the game, with their own vibe and their own in-jokes, and you as the player feel very left out of that. I think if you're going to make a switch like this from one very entrenched cast to another, you really need to nail that introduction to each character and show the way the group bond forms. There is no introduction to these characters whatsoever, and the group is already well and truly bonded by the time you arrive. Perhaps there'll be flashback missions later on that fill those gaps, because right now, those gaps feel very big indeed. Outside of that, you're looking at a ridiculous storyline of private militaries and stolen antique MacGuffins and gangs wearing wildly impractical helmets. It's dumb, but it's meant to be. It's meant to be silliness that's just funny window dressing for the chaos and the carnage. Is it funny? Sometimes. On the whole, it's not my brand of humor, but whatever, it's fine. It's more the general tone of silliness that I'm okay with, since Saints Row isn't meant to be some deep, probing psychological drama or societal commentary. It's satire, it's parody of parody, it's farce, and Saints Row certainly has plenty of that to go around. So how does this actually play? Well, to be honest, you kind of already know the answer to that because you've played it before, or at least games like it. There's a central storyline propped up by a number of main missions. There are side missions scattered throughout the open world that are driven by either side character storylines or just the desire to do fun shit for shits and giggles. There's a big map to leave your mark on, there's new weapons and vehicles and abilities to unlock, it's all that stuff. So far, what I'm not seeing is anything new from a gameplay, mission, or world design perspective. But if we're going to approach things from that angle, I think we first need to ask, should it be new? Like, what's the imperative for Saints Row to deliver new ideas? And the answer is, there's no imperative for that. A lot of people are going to be really happy with a formula that feels like a throwback rather than a reinvention. Personally, I'm generally interested in things I haven't experienced. That's my personal bias, and I expect that's how it's going to break here in Saints Row, where people who just want another fun, urban open world game that lets them blow up cars and murder bystanders with an attack helicopter, they're going to get what they want, but those looking for something that they haven't yet experienced are perhaps going to be disappointed. The linear missions that I experienced were all big on spectacle, but very light on in terms of gameplay. They were very standard third-person shooter encounters where waves of enemies drop into locations and I kill them, I move to the next room, there's a tank to drive or a minigun to pick up or something that makes big explosions and I use it to kill even more dudes. The most spectacular mission was one where I was chasing down a convoy and I had to jump from car to do that, but it was all very simple, almost quick-time event-like with random combat segments thrown in.
Ah, this one's burning too!
I thought I ordered you to retreat.
Honest to God, I am trying!
It was fun, don't get me wrong, but it was also very one-note. Enemies lack distinctive capabilities, they can't coordinate as a group, your movement kit is very limited, your weapons don't have advanced mechanics to deepen combat, you can't interact with the environment except to stand behind cover or blow up the occasional barrel, your melee animations are really stiff and stilted, you can't block or parry attacks, at least I don't think you can. There are abilities to use, and they're definitely fun. The Pineapple Express is easily the best one, where you shove a grenade down someone's pants and hurl them in a direction. You can also drop landmines and smoke bombs and tons of other things I wasn't able to unlock. They're on a nice short cooldown, so you can use them often, more so if you're killing lots of fools. But so far, these things aren't deepening the combat experience or making it more appealing to me. But as a reminder, this is a sandbox-driven game. I only had access to a limited selection of weapons, abilities, and vehicles, and I was only fighting early game enemies. It's possible that all of this becomes vastly more interesting later on as the game opens up, so I'm definitely keeping an open mind toward that. Finally, on the open world missions and open world design, Saints Row definitely gives you a hell of a lot to do. Even in the short time I had with the game, my map was already covered in mission markers. One of them was for a wingsuit stunt challenge, the other was as a getaway driver, the other one I had to leave bad reviews on a review app and then gang members would try and kill me because apparently they own that taco joint and they're just not a fan of free speech. All of this stuff is going to be great to play through for completionists who love the satisfaction of ticking off objectives, for co-op players who want to get up to shenanigans with their mates, or just anyone looking for relaxed, low-stakes, cathartic explosion fests. The side quest I really enjoyed was the one relating to the criminal ventures system. This is the one that essentially allows you to build a criminal empire across the city, setting up a number of businesses that look legitimate, but they're really just fronts allowing you to commit even more crime. This one had to do with setting up a chop shop, which first began by stealing back some car parts for a buddy, and then involved a shootout at the chop shop location, and after we'd opened our doors, I had to go out and start stealing cars of a certain make and model. This was cool. This was me leaving my criminal footprint on this world in a meaningful way, and I'd be keen to see what other ventures are available as my tendril spread further across and around Santo Alesso. But outside of this, I was looking to see how this world might respond to me more dynamically, or more interesting ways that I could interact with it. Watch Dogs Legion, for example. Not the most fun game, but it had lots of ideas about an open world with lots of different ways to interact with it, and the ability to play as different categories of people who each had their own unique combat, stealth, or hacking capabilities. That all combined to create a really interesting means of interacting with that rendition of London. Like I said, it was probably too clever by half, but there were things we hadn't seen before. Saints Row doesn't have anything like that. Red Dead 2 is littered with dynamic events that unfold in towns or by roadsides, meaning even routine routes could house new exciting opportunities to interact with the world. Saints Row doesn't have any of those either, at least not from what I could see. Like the combat, mission design, and narrative, it's pretty one-dimensional, and while I was having a good time some of the time, I was often thinking how much this fails to reach the bar set by similar experiences. Stuff like GTA 5, which ironically released nearly a decade ago, or Red Dead 2, or Watch Dogs Legion, or even Just Cause, or even modern Far Cry games, which I think are the closest to what Saints Row is aiming for, and I think Far Cry is just doing it way better. I don't think that Saints Row is shaping up to be a bad game. I think it has lots of things going for it that are going to make a bunch of people really happy. Going into the hands-on session, I thought I was going to be one of those people, but as time went on, I realized I probably wasn't going to be, and so I kept playing to see if I could find that thing to get me excited about that August 23rd release date. Sadly, I couldn't find it during my 4 hours with Saints Row, but I'm keeping an open mind, and I'll let you know how it all goes when I review the complete package next month. SteelSeries, great friend of the channel, partnered with them at the start of the year, and it's been awesome since SteelSeries make top tier stuff, and I've been hearing nothing but positive feedback from people who have grabbed themselves a new keyboard or mouse or headset. If you're at all in doubt, just go and look up some reviews for SteelSeries products. They never disappoint, for real. One of the benefits of partnering with SteelSeries is that I get the inside scoop on their upcoming products, and so I've been fortunate enough to get an early look at the brand new Apex Pro Mini keyboards. These were sent to me a few weeks back ahead of their launch this month, and I gotta tell you, these keyboards maintain the same quality bar set by every other SteelSeries product, and in some aspects, they exceed them. The Apex Pro Mini keyboards feature OmniPoint 2.0 switches, which have an 11 times faster response time, 10 times faster actuation, and are 2 times more durable than standard mechanical switches. If you want the fastest, most responsive keyboard on the market, then this is it. Not only is it fast, but it's adjustable since the OmniPoint 2.0 switches allow you to adjust between 0.2mm and 3.8mm, meaning you can make your keyboard more sensitive to the touch, or you can adjust for deeper, more deliberate key presses. All of this cutting-edge technology is delivered in a form factor that is 40% smaller than your average keyboard. Not only does this give you more desk space for a cleaner look, but it also gives you more room to move your mouse. Plus, it's really portable. When I travel in future, this is the keyboard I'm going to be carrying with me because it's almost half the size of most other keyboards without having to make any compromise in functionality whatsoever. The Apex Pro Mini comes in both wired and wireless variants, and if you have any doubt about wireless responsiveness, then get this. On May 23rd, FaZe Carrigan became the first pro gamer to win a CSGO major using the Apex Pro Mini wireless keyboard. This thing is brand spanking new. It just hit the SteelSeries.com store, so if you want to grab one, then be sure to get in fast. Best of all, your boy is hooking you up with a tasty discount. If you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout, you'll get 12% off your purchase. That's offer code SKILLUP at SteelSeries.com. I'll leave a link below. Thanks SteelSeries for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.